Hello and welcome to another Film Friday here on Fisher Revolution, here with my amazing partner and wife, Eve.
Hello!
And today we're going to showcase a artwork and movie that we made back in 2019 called Walking Makes You Think Differently. And I made the artwork when I was in Quito, Ecuador for about 10 days. And I had this idea about going for a walk every day and documenting the city and sort of what it's like being an outsider in the city and in the culture.
Now, I was not on this trip.
Right.
So this was, I think, perhaps the first time that you made the imagery and then came home and I did research without having been to the actual place.
Right. And
about the place, about its history, about its religious iconography, all kinds of different things. And then I wanted to sort of recreate the walk that you took, but also fictionalize it.
Right. And I should point out that this particular artwork, and there's another artwork as well that I made in Ecuador, is all part of an upcoming exhibit at the Knoxville Museum of Art opening in January. So
Woo-hoo!
If you're in Tennessee or anywhere by Knoxville, you want to see the exhibition, it's called Where the Sun Casts No Shadow, the Creative Crossroads of Quito, Ecuador.
Ooh, very good.
I can't believe I remembered it. But for the camera, I decided I wanted a camera that I could put in my pocket. And it's something that
you wanted to be very mobile.
I wanted to be very mobile. I didn't want to look like the tourist walking around, even
flexible.
though I would. I wanted to be flexible. So I chose the Lomo LCW, which is the Lomo wide. It has a 17 millimeter lens. I actually love this camera. It's a little under $500. I had 3 of them with me. 2 that I would put in my jacket pocket every day, and then 1 that I would leave back in my hotel room. All the film that I shot was 400 TX. And what's interesting about this camera is that it has 2 focus settings, 0.9 meters to infinity and 0.4 to 0.9. So you can literally just leave it on the one setting, walk around, and shoot. It's
okay, so
very
I have to ask, the one you left back in your hotel room, that was in case you fell in the river and...
Basically, or if something happened, anything
Something
stupid,
happened, you'd still have a camera.
I always like to have a plan B. This camera's awesome too because you have to hold your fingers way off to the side like this. If you hold it like this, your fingers will end up in the frame. So I would shoot it something like this. It has a really good metering system in it that I found to be quite accurate. So focus was basically focus free. But what I also love about this camera is it has the ability to do half frame and full frame, which is pretty awesome. That's close enough. It does half frame or full frame, and you can also adjust it on the very front here. So instead of getting 36 shots per roll, you get 72. That's really awesome.
I love how you've got this little notation here.
Focus. Yeah, because every now and then I'll do a close-up and I'll forget to flip the lever back. And when you're looking through the little plastic window, everything's in focus because it's a rangefinder. So I had to remind myself. It also has a multiple exposure capability on the bottom. So this camera really nailed everything that I needed. Now the lens is a 17 millimeter lens. It's an f4.5. Depth of field is really incredible on this camera. The only downside to this camera, in my mind, was that the lens is not the sharpest lens, but for the work that I made and I was making, it's plenty sharp.
You'll see.
As you'll see. It's not like a sharp, but it's pretty awesome. So if you are looking for a really good wide-angle street shooting film camera to carry around, highly recommend the LCW. But I think we should play the movie.
Did you talk about the film?
Yeah, I shot Tri-X.
Okay.
That's all.
That's the film.
So here, this film. That's meant the movie.
I know I meant this film.
Oh yeah, so I shot Tri-X. And everything was processed in diaphragm, so I had lots of exposure latitude as well.
What I know it says in the film, but what's the
I believe the artwork is 30 feet wide.
Right, and so that's a continuous...
roll of film. Yeah, so it was a 1 hour walk. And we talk about this more in the movie, so...
Okay, so we'll just shut up.
So
watch the film.
Walking makes you think differently.
Enjoy. They say walking makes you think differently. So every morning, very early, I get out and walk. The air is always fresh then, and not yet ripe from the shadowless sun. I count the paving stones, watched the sky, composed little poems for my favorite blocks and hymns for the buildings. In my mind, on these walks, something loosens, like a camera losing its focus, one click out from sharp. Then what I see becomes less defined, and I begin to perceive what I had been missing. Shoes turn into birds. Birds turn into angels. Angels become clouds. A woman in a doorway becomes my mother, and my mother becomes a fruit seller. Men with buckets of paint are scaling a wall, and I wonder what mischief they might be up to. Words are free in Quito, and so there are lots of them everywhere you go. Walls, too, are free, and so images appear vibrantly on them as if conjured by the magic of the place itself. One day, blank plaster or concrete blocks, the next, an explosion of life. That's the way it is here. A skinny dog lives behind the door of a nearby church. Every morning, I bring him a half of my morning biscuit, and he lets me pass. He's not friendly, but I like to think we are some kind of companions nonetheless. I think of naming him and realize he might just as well have named me too. Spanish sticks in my mouth like large grapes. At the cafe, I tried to ask for a menu and choked so profoundly that they brought me water and begged me to stick to English, for safety's sake. One morning, very early, I walk further than I ever had before and suddenly realize that someone is following me. There is no one else on the block. It is unsettling to know this. Turning a corner, I come upon a group of women holding open umbrellas in front of a hotel. It is their presence, I know, that saves me. In the church near my hotel, there is a painting of a man being beheaded as a woman looks on serenely.
I've always found that walking is one of the best ways for me to engage with a location. I'm an avid walker, and when I had the opportunity to go to Quito, I knew I wanted to go for hour-long walks every day. It's amazing what you can tune into when you just go out and walk and look. So the artwork, Walking Makes You Think Differently, is an in-camera collage on film. It's one entire roll of 35 millimeter film of overlapping frames that are done in camera. So the first frame is the start of the walk, the last frame is the end of the walk. And I found that in Quito, I was doing these walks on a pretty regular basis every morning. Quito is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is considered by many people to be the most preserved of all the Latin American cities. It's built on an ancient Inca ruin, and it boasts over 30 churches in the historic area downtown. Yet, as I don't speak Spanish, I found that I could engage with the city as an outsider, as a voyeur walking around. I very consciously chose cameras that I could put in my pockets that were very small, not the normal cameras that I work with, because A, I didn't really want to draw attention to myself. And B, I wanted something that I could respond very quickly to the city as it evolved around me.
Steve had come home from Quito, Ecuador, and in his travels, he had created this beautiful panoramic. And in making the text to go with that, I wanted to replicate the walk that he took every day in the text. And so I created sort of a fictional character that was Steve, but not Steve. It was based on many of his experiences, but also fictionalized. So I also created other experiences that seemed to go along with this story. And wanted to talk about that weird, precarious feeling of being a stranger in a strange land and being an outsider who's sort of fascinated by a different culture, a different environment, and trying to engage with it on some level, and also never really being able to truly do so. I loved the descriptions that Steve came home with about the beautiful colorfulness and the murals everywhere, which speaks to this idea that creativity will come through even when you have a community that doesn't have a lot of resources to put towards that. You know, if you have a blank wall and you've got some cheap paint, you can have creativity taking place, and words are free. So there's poetry, and there's a big emphasis on the arts, even in the street environment when you're just walking around. Also, the ever presence of the Catholic Church is he talked about a lot, that he felt that very strongly. So I wanted that to be in there, and in particular, the presence of the female figure who stands above the town in a statue form and looks down, and she is the woman of the apocalypse. And I loved that image of her sort of standing guard over the town. Lepers wore bells, I am told by a priest. Lepers wore bells to warn everyone of their impending approach. Prostitutes carry umbrellas, I am told by the hotel clerk. Refugees carry suitcases on their heads, I observe for myself. What do I carry? I carry a box with light inside. I wonder what this says about me. I mean, besides gringo. It smells of tobacco and bread on this street. Women sell tall ice creams through car windows during rush hour, or rather, it is something that looks like ice cream, but has a foamier texture and does not appear to melt. The wealthiest people, I am told, drink instant coffee because it is more expensive and therefore prestigious than fresh ground. The earth moves regularly in Quito as if it is restless. There have been 7 earthquakes since I arrived Sunday. Before I leave, there will have been 20. What you don't realize is that earthquakes have a sound to them, a kind of a hungry roar. A table moves under my plate, and the waiter lies. He tells me it is just a bus passing by. A French couple at the next table are calmly pouring coffee from their saucers back into their cups. The woman of the apocalypse has wings and is clothed in the sun. She wears a crown of 12 stars on her head and stands with her foot on the head of a dragon. Holding her hands out to me, she tells me she has subdued the serpent with her long silver chain.